meant for house officers on residency training program in 2020 to the tune of 540 million. According to reports at the Federal Ministry of Health, Labor and Employment at the weekend, disclosed that the Federal Ministry of Health was considering reporting the doctors who have failed to refund the alleged illegal payments back to the Treasury to the Anti-Corruption Agency. One of the sources said there were three categories of medical officers involved in the scam, including some consultant doctors. The source further said that the government had accused management of some of the teaching hospitals of allegedly smuggling names of those who had completed their residency training program into the list of house officers that received payment from the Medical Training Fund in 2020. However, regarding the smuggling of names into the salary payments platform, reports said that the federal government has issued queries to the chief medical directors of federal teaching hospitals involved in the illegality. About 205 doctors were said to have been illegally recruited in the Badon Teaching Hospital, while the Calabar Teaching Hospital carried illegal recruitment of over 100 doctors out of the 500 health workers. The Nigeria Association of Engineering, Geology and the Environment, NAEGE, has conferred its prestigious Distinguished Fellowship on the Deputy Governor of Oyo State, Engineer Rahul Laniyo. Engineer Laniyo was inducted during the association's sixth annual conference held at the International Conference Center of the University of Ibadan recently. The association said the investor was in attestation of Olaniyo's outstanding performance as a foremost practitioner among the cadre of engineers in Nigeria. Engineer Olaniyo, a civil engineer, encouraged the association to formally write to the state government and recommend what their role and impotence is, so that the government can adopt their suggestion as policy. Engineer Olanio, however, appreciated the association for awarding him the biggest honor of the association, promising to be a worthy ambassador while working towards its growth. You are still listening to the midday news on T Solid Radio. Still to come is the foreign and sport news. Do remember to download our app T Solid on Play Store or log on to www.tsolid.tv. You can as well follow us on our social media platforms on our T Solid Radio TV. Moving on to the foreign scene. The Mozambican weather authorities have warned that more than 1 million people may be affected by floods in the upcoming rainy season. The country is set to begin its rainy season in a month. According to the weather authorities, the southern and central regions will receive more rainfall than normal, while like Cabo Delgado and Niassa will experience below normal rainfall. He added that there was a moderate risk of flooding in hydrographic basins such as Maputo, Umbeluzi, Ikomati, and Limpopo. And hundreds of opposition supporters have held a march in the Angolan capital, Lahunda, to protest against changes to electoral laws. Under the new legislation, votes will be tallied centrally instead of being counted in the regions. The demonstration was organized by the main opposition UNITA party and joined by other groups. UNITA has suggested the introduction of measures to counter electoral fraud, including biometric voter identification and the involvement of civil society in ballot counting. President Jao Lourenco is expected to run for a second term in next year's poll. King Mohammed VI of Morocco has appointed Aziza Kanoch of the Liberal National Rally of Independence RNI party as prime minister and asked him to form a government. RNI emerged as the biggest party in the parliamentary election, crushing the Islamists who had led the country for a decade. Elected politicians in Morocco have only limited powers as key decisions remain in the hands of the monarch. According to reports 10 years ago, the Islamist Justice and Development Party became the country's biggest party in parliament after electoral reforms were introduced following the Arab Spring protests which swept North Africa and the Middle East. Meanwhile, a decade on, it lost all but 12 of its 125 seats, leaving it just the eighth biggest party. The South African president has announced the easing of some restrictions that have been in place to curb the spread of coronavirus. In a televised address, Cyril Ramaphosa said due to a decline in infection, an overnight curfew would be shortened, alcohol restrictions would be eased, and larger gatherings allowed. He said the supply of vaccines was no longer a constraint and called on people to play their part in stopping the spread of the virus by coming forward to get jabbed. About 1 in 5 adults in South Africa has now fully vaccinated, which is far higher rates than elsewhere in Africa. According to a report, it is the worst East country on the continent with close to 85,000 deaths from COVID 19, while about 3% of Africa's population has been vaccinated. And moving on to the world of sport. Nigeria Tornadoes were crowned Nigeria National League champions on Sunday after defeating 3SC 3-2 in the playoffs final at the Inamdi Azikwe Stadium in Enugu. Tornadoes 3SC, Remo Stars, and Gombe United had all qualified for the Nigeria Professional Football League. In Sunday's game, Tornadoes took an early lead in the ninth minute through Shashudin Aishin. The 3SC leveled from the spot in the 16th through Gafa Olafimihon. Olafimihon, I beg your pardon. Shooting booked their place in the NPFL after topping the Southern Conference with 7 points after wins over Bender Insurance and Ekiti United, and a draw against Remo, where Remo placed second with one win and two draws, guaranteeing 5 points. In the Northern Conference, Tornadoes came tops with 5 points from a win over Economy Warriors and draws against Gombe and DMD. Gombe also had 5 points to finish second with a win over DMD and draws against Tornadoes and Economy. And finally, Super Eagles vice captain William Trust Ekong has been named among four Watford players in line to take over from Troy Deeney as the club's captain by manager Sixto Munoz. After 11 years and more than 400 matches with Watford, leading the club to Premier League promotion twice, Deeney finally left the club as a free agent in August and has since signed for Birmingham City. In the first few games played so far, when Denny was still on the Hunners bench, Tom Cleverley, goalkeeper Ben Foster, and fullback Craig Cathcart took turns handling the campaign's handbag. Cleverley is the early favourite for the role as he was named captain in the two of Watford's three EPL games, including the 3-2 triumph at Vicarage Road over Aston Villa on the opening weekend. Meanwhile, Super Eagles centre back Trust Ekong, who joined from Udinese last year, is also in the mix, having skippered the side a few times in the championship last term. With that, we've come to the end of the news. A recap of the major headlines. Falana takes over resident doctors' illegal battles with federal government. Geoscience engineers induct or your deputy governor or Lanio. And on the foreign scene, I read Mozambique issues flood alert for 1 million people. And on the world of sports, Tornadoes win NNL title. Ensure to go by all precautionary measures to stay safe from COVID 19, as recommended by the World Health Organization and the Nigerian Center for Disease Control. Do remember to download our app T-Solid on Play Store or log on to www.tsolid.tv. You can as well follow us on our various social media platforms on our T-Solid Radio TV. The news was compiled and edited by Akachi Chijioke. I am Joy Aki Olamigoke. Good afternoon and many thanks for listening.